Hi everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady, and today I am coming from my parents' home in Aiken, South Carolina, and I thought it would be fun to do a garden tour here of their retirement property. So they purchased this about 4 years ago, and the landscape was terrible. In fact, I told them not to buy the house because the landscape was so bad. And my dad was like, "Isn't that why you went to college? To fix bad landscapes?" Which is entirely accurate. I can't take credit for this though. This amazing creation was designed and installed by my dear friend and super talented plantsman and designer Jenks Farmer. You should totally follow him on all the platforms. He owns a crinum farm about 8 miles here, and he's just an absolute treasure for those of us living in the Southeast and really everywhere. And my parents, of course, are active gardeners as well, so he had the bonus of having not only, clients that wanted a diversified garden with lots of natives and flowering plants, but that they will actually be, active participants in the maintenance. And so I'm just so impressed with what has developed over the last couple of years, and I can't wait to walk around and show it to you. So let's hop on. If you see my eyes are wandering, it's because there's a bunch of monarchs and I'm very distracted. So hopefully I'll get to capture them on video as well. So we'll start out front here. This is sort of a big foundation bed that goes all the way across. And you have to remember, my parents moved from southeastern Michigan. So my mom always loved brugmansias, but they had to be container plants for her. So she just couldn't believe when she moved here that they're hardy and they basically bloom a large portion of the year. Like you can see, this brugmansia is already in full flower. Like mine at home don't usually flower until October because in zone 7 they die to the ground. Here, Aiken is a very reliable zone 8. And, the winters really haven't been very harsh. Also, you can see, lantanas are totally hardy. This is a broadleaf Tibicina, probably grandifolia, in a container here, although I bet Tibicinas are ground hardy here as well. In past years, this bed was like overrun with zinnias, and so because she knew she was going to have surgery, which is why I'm down helping with her recovery, she didn't want to have as many zinnias in this bed because they get really tall and kind of crazy, but she doesn't have the heart to like cut them down or remove them. Another plant that's shockingly hardy is this geranium that you use to keep mosquitoes off of you. Citronella. Oh my gosh, there we go. And you can see, it's planted in the ground and it's come back for 4 years since she's been living here. I didn't really expect that to be the case, but it is. And this, I love this asparagus. This is something that Jenks installed. Wow, that citronella smells good. Now she did plant mint, and I don't recommend doing that, but it doesn't look terrible, and the animals don't eat it. And that's the thing, they have a huge deer population in their neighborhood, so you can see things like the mint and the citronella, the lantana, over here having rosemary. All of those are helpful strategies for preventing the deer from coming in and eating the other plants that are in, the back of the bed, like especially those roses that she has planted there. So, plants with a lot of scent, whether they're herbs or just, other things that have strong scent to their foliage, tend not to get eaten. Same thing like salvia. This is Salvia coccinea. This is a really great, reliable plant that's very drought tolerant. Same thing here. This is Verbena montaviensis, and it really has a weird smell. Like, it reminds me of like an oil ointment that I used to have as like a kid. I don't remember what it was called, but it has a real medicinal smell. Now over in this bed, I don't know what a lot of these plants are, because a lot of these are natives, and they're not necessarily native like to Raleigh where I live. I think this is Rhexia. I might be wrong, I'll have to look it up. But it's really nice how it's naturalized. You know, there are encore azaleas through here, a big Edgeworthia that I actually propagated. Hymenocallis in full bloom here, which is so awesome. And, you know, lots of perennials. You know, you can see Agapanthus, which have finished, and the Society garlic, which is there, and then Nepeta as a ground cover, and the Solidago is starting to bloom right here. This shrub next to it is pineapple guava, which blooms a bit earlier in the season. And overall, it's just, you see the crinum, that's, you know, one of Jinx's, you know, signature plants that he uses in landscapes. And, you know, this has become, I think, what they would classify as a really low maintenance, very effective border that they don't have to do a lot of work in. You see all the glass balls, you see where I get it from. I love glass, just like my parents. And another plant that works really, really well for keeping deer out, keeping deer at bay, is this Tagetes lemmonii. I'm gonna have to look that up. It has a really, really strong, pungent smell. Oh, it's awful. Deer absolutely hate it. It's a big, beastly plant. You could see it. You know, you can prune it. However, it's really extraordinary when you let it grow like this, because it will be in full flower, typically starting in November when the days are short. So this blooms with short days. And, you know, it flowers basically down here all winter. So it's pretty extraordinary. So off of their foundation landscape, they have this native woodland area where they've planted a lot of, you know, ornamental things and left a lot of the native plants. So, you know, the majority of this is native. But then they added things like, I brought this as a heavy berry calicarpa, which the berries are starting to form. They just haven't colored yet. I also brought them, I brought them a number of different calicarpas, and I think this might be a cuminata. It's coloring up really early. See that really nice dark berry? I am really into calicarpa, so here's another one. This also looks like a cuminata. Really large, dark berries. Really terrific plants. So coming around here, it's really great to see that milkweed is just starting to naturalize here. And I'm sure that's why there's monarch butterflies floating around. Hopefully they'll be laying their eggs, and that would be the generation that would migrate down to Mexico this fall. And look, they grow olives, and they actually get olives. So look, here's olives. Like, you know, I shared last week, I was so excited to have my olive tree, but mine doesn't do anything quite to this extent. So this is the same variety, Arbequina. It's one of the most hardy varieties, and I mean, it's really set quite a lot of fruit. I don't have any experience actually doing anything with olives, but it would be pretty cool to, you know, harvest these and make it so you could eat them. So back to this native woodland. There's a lot of things like sparkleberry and longleaf pines in here, which I think longleaf pines are so beautiful. I love that texture. They also produce enormous cones that I really like decorating with. And a lot of different species of oaks. And you know, these tend to be like kind of scrubby. You see it's a fairly short woodland, but very effective, great habitat. In here is where they've planted a lot of the camellia collection that I brought them. They have to have the camellias caged though, because the deer they're just so destructive. And I guess this keeps my dad busy because his cages have to keep getting bigger. The moment they're not caged, the deer will eat them all. Especially these japonica forms that bloom through the winter. This is maybe a little bit too dark, to be honest, for the camellias. They really do appreciate a little bit more brightness. You see some of the sasanquas that were transplanted in here are doing really well. They don't need to be caged. And these are starting to set flower buds. So these will be blooming soon. It's always exciting to see. You can see where I get the urge to always have little artwork incorporated in. Lots of little sculptures. This is what my dad said his new hobby is going to be, is making garden sculptures. So that's good. So out here on the edge of the woodland, they've tried a lot of things out here, and it's really hot, it's really sunny. I think they do have it irrigated, but you know, the goal was to not make this have to be watered. So I think the pycnanthemum was a really good choice, just to let that naturalize. That's the kind of silver leaf perennial. They've added a bunch of brugmansias out here, and you know, little dwarf crepe myrtles. This has been, you know, a difficult spot just because it's at like the far reaches of the garden. And I really like this border out here where they've added a bunch of different lantana, again, because the deer don't eat them, plumbago, you know, abelias. That's actually a pomegranate right here. There's a fig. So they're totally foodscaping, not with vegetables, but with fruit trees, which is great because that's a little lower maintenance. This is a big border. Like, I remember when they were developing this, my advice was like, are you sure? That's a lot of square footage. They're maybe a lot more ambitious than I am. I think that's fair to say. But it's starting to fill in. You know, you'll still have weeds here and there, but overall, like, you know, there's no neighbors that are right on top of this. So you can't really tell from a distance, and I think that's the joy. Love that vitex. It's in full bloom here. Sweet little skipper. Again, really great to see milkweed. It's kind of naturalizing along with this ageratum. Pollinators love. You know, be prepared with a plant like this. It takes a lot of space. It spreads vigorously, but that's the goal. This border is a lot of square footage, like I said. And, you know, you don't want to have to be out here micromanaging this much space, especially this much space in full sun in zone 7, or I'm sorry, zone 8. Now, I'm really excited to see how big their salvia leucanthus are. It makes mine look super wimpy, and they are just starting to flower. This is my favorite salvia. If you're not familiar, it's also called Mexican sage. And here in zone 8, they're basically like evergreen perennials. So for me, they die to the ground, but here they don't. You can see the blooms are just starting to come. They're really fuzzy. I love the silver texture, the foliage. The deer hate it. So again, everything in here is really a strategy for preventing deer from coming in and eating. I have my eyes peeled for monarch caterpillars. I don't see any. Here's another milkweed, but I don't see any caterpillars yet. I haven't seen any at my house either, but hopefully soon. So out here in the blazing hot sun, at the end of the driveway, road adjacent. They have this border that is just absolutely filled with pollinators. And, you know, it's the combination of these dazzleberry crepe myrtles, the zinnias, and the pycnanthemum. Pycnanthemum really is, I think, the best perennial for attracting a wide diversity of pollinators. It's hard to capture on the phone, but, you know, there's everything from, you know, flies and honeybees and wasps, you know, different moths and skippers, and there's just so much activity happening. Beware, because, you know, pycnanthemum spreads, so put it in a place where spreading is acceptable, and then you won't be aggravated by it. It is really easy to pull out, but still my recommendation is put it someplace where you're trying to fill up open space, and you won't be disappointed, especially with this incredible array of insects. I have to say, I really like these dwarf crepe myrtles. They totally do their job. I know they're not native, but I think they're a-okay. They do so well here in heat and humidity. And of course, our native Magnolia grandiflora, these are little gem. They're still in bloom. They smell so good. I took a picture of this earlier before the sun faded it. And they have a lot of ornamental grasses, thanks to Jinx. These are all pink muley grass, and they look absolutely spectacular in the autumn. This is a bed that we've struggled to get the ground plane covered, and I don't quite understand what's going on. But you see, here's a crinum in bloom. And every year I come down and I scatter, especially things like poppies, larkspur, nigella. You can see there's some bachelor button left. And I don't know whether it's just a soil quality issue. The soil is very different here compared to where I live. I live on sand, and this is like a weird mix of clay and sand, and it's really hard packed because this is, you know, a newish development. So I think there's still some more soil work that needs to be done to make this bed a little more fertile and make the plants a bit happier. Over here you can see more brugmansia in full bloom. Now there's some problem going on with the Prunus mumes, and I'm determined to figure it out, but I don't know what is going on. So I need to ask some people some questions. Like, it looks like a nutritional deficiency, but it might be something that neighbors are spraying and that the Prunus mumes are absorbing. I'm not sure. And not related to plants, if anybody knows anyone who's interested in a 1977 Coupe de Ville, it has 77,000 miles on it. This was my grandparents' going to church car. And it's in mint condition. My dad's taken really good care of it. It's really big. It does not fit in the garage. So he's had it in storage, and he's decided that if the right buyer comes along, he's willing to part with it because he wants somebody to enjoy it and not just sit in a storage unit, and I agree with that. So, just putting the word out there. If you or someone you know might be interested, drop me a note. When they first moved here, my mom hated these native weeping yopon hollies. But I'm glad they left them because they are a great evergreen screen for their air conditioning unit, but they also get to hide some, you know, big containers that they use, and like they have their wheelbarrow tucked in. So I'm really happy that she left these. I encouraged her to leave these, and I'm glad she did. And they have some more camellias on this side, which are really beautiful. These are japonicas that bloom in March, and then more encore azaleas. Actually, these aren't encores. I forget what variety this is, but it's a nice one. Along this side of the house. And then a plant that I'm not super fond of, but it's doing really well here, is the Radicans Gardenia. In Raleigh, this tends to not be a very long-lived plant, but it's doing very well here. So, you know, that's good. And of course, you know, the lantana is kind of taken over all the open spaces. One of my favorite lantanas is this pinkish purple one. This is also the species Montaviensis. It's the one that I was saying earlier. It smells like that ointment. I don't know, like you used to put it on wounds. Like, I haven't seen that ointment since I was a kid, so I don't know if they still make it, but it's very effective for preventing animals. And of course, animals don't tend to browse on gardenias either, so they are also a very practical solution. So screening has been a primary focus because they're used to living out in the country in Michigan. Now they live in a neighborhood. They don't want to see people's houses. And they've done a great job of developing, you know, multi-layered tree shrub screens, especially using things like cupressus and juniperus virginiana. You know, they have some palmettos in there. I don't support the use of ligustrums because I think they can become quite invasive, but they had them and they didn't want to waste them, so these got placed out here. And they have a ton of fragrant tea olives, Osmanthus fragrans. And though this isn't native, you see this in every southern landscape, and they're just such a terrific plant. They're broadleaf evergreen, and they flower down here for the majority of the winter. You can see they're large screening plants, and their fragrance is like the scent of a fresh apricot. It's the most delightful smell. So this entire border is all Osmanthus. I think that was a good choice. They had a house built kind of across the way, and these prevented them from having to see all the construction. I mentioned the big cones of the longleaf pine, and here you can see they're really nice. I just think these are such a cool cone. I like using them to decorate around the holidays. My mom's lucky she has access to all of these. Okay, we are heading into the backyard, and this is my dad's latest project. It's kept him busy since March. I'm not sure it was entirely homeowner association approved. However, it's really nice when you get up inside of it. It you know, creates a lot of shade. These fans are really powerful. They keep you cool. So let's head on up and investigate Dan's project, which they call Teddy's Terrace, for their giant cat, Teddy. So I should say, my dad is a retired engineer, and it shows. He likes having big projects, like projects that I would never take on. You know, like giant concrete staircases, gigantic walls that are filled with fill to make a flat space in this otherwise really weird. This backyard had a really weird hump that led up to the pool, and it was very impractical. The flat space was super narrow. It was really hard to have furniture here, and you know, you always kind of felt a little bit uneasy that you might fall in. On a day like today, falling in the pool would not be the worst scenario. However, it is really nice now that they have all this flat, safe, entertaining space, and that's where I get it from. I love having people over. I love, you know, having dinner parties, and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I totally got that from my parents. So they use this a lot, and I can tell you it's like 10 degrees cooler standing under here with these shades. These of course are sails. I have never worked with sails, but I hear they're notoriously difficult, and that was sort of the scenario with Dad building this. He had to do a lot of different renditions and re-engineer this over and over again to accommodate, you know, strong winds and being able to pull these sails down at a moment's notice if a storm blew through. And It's probably not a project for me, but I'm glad I can enjoy it here, and I'm glad they enjoy it. Okay, Dad just got the irrigation on. Say hi.
Hello, how are you?
Do you want to give any details for your giant engineering project that's kept you busy all of 2021?
Well, I think so. We did a reinforced concrete masonry block wall, split face. I went with inch and a half heavy Schedule 40 pipe, painted stainless steel cable railing that goes all the way around, and I use these special fittings that allow you to do odd angles. There's T's, elbows, coupling pieces, and it makes for a very strong construction.
There is no movement on Teddy's terrace.
No movement. So we're still working out some of the details. Our shades don't seem to be pleasing to everybody, so I'm going to have to deal with that. It must be a little too bright for some of the inhabitants here, but we'll weather the storm.
Overall, it's just a really awesome space, and it's made such a difference for you to have this flat, open area, because it was a hill like here. You see, it was a really steep grade going down. It's hard to walk. Like, Dad, this is hard to mow because you have to push the mower up this hill. So he's thinking of actually extending the wall around. I've mentioned that you're more ambitious than I am.
Oh, I don't know. I think you do pretty well.
I don't create projects like this, though.
This is a big one. Yeah, we not only have switched lighting, indirect, it shines up and shines down. The switches over on the wall of the house. We have electrical feeds for the fans that really make a big difference when there isn't a lot of air movement out here. And there's also switches underneath, behind these for plugins for music. There's stereo. So pretty happy with it. We have a fire table here that will be nice for all season. And it also has an infrared burner that will allow you to get heat coming out around it. So this will be a 4-season space now. So we're pretty happy. I have automatic watering on all the plants. So that's quite a convenience there. And been very pleasant. And then expanding the space out, if you look at the distance over here, it's probably 75 feet now from point to point, which gives you a lot of entertainment space. And that's been our main goal. Kind of a nautical theme with the sails. And we have a...
demonstrate your bell.
Yeah, we have a captain's bell here that we will ring as a gift.
Is that when the gin and tonics are ready?
The gin and tonics will be ready. And I also have a little console that I set up here with similar fittings that I have in the railing and a captain's wheel that will be able to steer this on different excursions. We're going to have themed parties now. Like we'll be sailing to Greece on one, and we will have a Greek music. We'll have Greek food. So we'll be doing
Greek
that.
wine.
Greek wine for sure, Roditas. And I also have starboard and port side green and red lights in order to put out when we have our sailing going on.
For your land yacht.
This is our land yacht. That's exactly
No
it.
motion sickness.
None, guaranteed no motion sickness.
Well, thanks, Dad, for joining the YouTube video.
Well, thank you, and enjoy.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's garden tour here from my parents' home in lovely Aiken, South Carolina. I'm happy to report my mom is recovering really quickly from her surgery, and she makes me seem like I'm in a coma. She's like the Energizer Bunny. So it's great that she is feeling good, although she has to rest. So Gonna keep making sure that she stays entertained with ample television shows and keep telling her to enjoy the air conditioning because it's not the sort of day that you necessarily want to be out working in the garden anyway. It's really hot, it's really humid. But I thank you all so much for tuning in, and I look forward to sharing more videos in the coming week. Thanks everybody.